The school hallway smelled of chalk dust and forgotten lunches, a sterile echo of my own childhood. I was late again, rushing to the parent-teacher conference for my son, Ethan, who'd been acting out since the divorce. But when I saw him, Mr. Caleb Winters, standing at the classroom door with a smile that felt like sunlight breaking through a storm, something inside me cracked open. I'm David Harper, a 42-year-old contractor with calloused hands and a heart still bruised from a marriage that unraveled 2 years ago. Ethan, my 10-year-old, was the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. His fifth-grade teacher, Caleb, was new to Willow Creek Elementary, and I'd heard whispers about him: young, passionate, maybe too idealistic for this sleepy Ohio town. I didn't expect the man who'd change everything to be waiting for me in room 204, his eyes bright with something I hadn't felt in years: hope. The conference started innocently enough. Caleb sat across from me at a desk too small for either of us, his tie slightly crooked, his dark hair falling just over his brow. He spoke about Ethan with a care that wasn't rehearsed, how my son's drawings showed a vivid imagination, how his outbursts might be grief masquerading as anger. I nodded, trying to focus, but my gaze kept drifting to Caleb's hands, the way they moved when he talked, expressive and alive. Mr. Harper, he said, leaning forward, Ethan needs you to see him. Really see him. His voice was soft but firm, like he was reaching past my defenses. I swallowed hard, guilt twisting in my chest. I'd been so caught up in keeping the business afloat, in surviving the loneliness, that I'd missed how much Ethan was hurting. Caleb didn't stop there. He pulled out a folder of Ethan's artwork, vivid sketches of superheroes and stormy seas. He's got a gift, Caleb said, his eyes locking with mine. But he's carrying something heavy. I think you are too. The words hit like a punch. I wasn't ready for someone to see me like that, not when I'd spent years building walls around my pain. After the conference, I lingered, unsure why. Caleb offered to grab coffee at the diner down the street to talk more about Ethan. I should have said no. I had invoices waiting, a crew to manage, a life that didn't include sitting across from a 28-year-old teacher who made my pulse race. But I said yes, and that's where it all began. The diner was quiet, the kind of place where the jukebox played old country tunes and the coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. Caleb sat across from me, his jacket slung over the chair, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with freckles. He talked about Ethan, about how he'd started a lunchtime art club to give kids like my son a safe space. But then he asked about Mui. I looked so tired, why I seemed like I was carrying the weight of the world. Nobody's asked me that in a long time, I admitted, staring into my coffee. Not since. I trailed off, the ghost of my ex-wife, Sarah, hovering between us. Caleb didn't push, but his silence was an invitation, and I found myself spilling fragments of a story I'd buried: how Sarah left, how I'd failed her, how I was terrified of failing Ethan too. He listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he said something I'll never forget: "You're not failing him, David. You're here. That's more than a lot of kids get." His hand brushed mine on the table, just for a second, and it was like a spark igniting something I'd long thought dead. I drove home that night, my mind a mess of guilt and longing. Caleb was Ethan's teacher, for God's sake. He was too young, too bright, too everything I wasn't. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop picturing his smile, the way his voice wrapped around my name. I was a straight manner, so I'd always thought. So why couldn't I get him out of my head? The next day, Ethan came home with a note from Caleb, inviting me to the art club's first showcase. "You should come," Ethan said, his eyes brighter than I'd seen in months. Mr. Winters says it's going to be awesome. I ruffled his hair, promising I'd be there, but my heart was racing for reasons I couldn't name. Willow Creek wasn't the kind of town where people talked openly about things like this. I'd grown up here, learned to keep my head down, to fit in. But Calebi was different. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and it was starting to unravel something in me. I didn't know if I was ready for what came next, but I knew I couldn't stay away. The art club showcase was held in the school gym, a cavernous space transformed by strings of fairy lights and colorful student artwork pinned to makeshift walls. I stood in the back, my work boots scuffing the polished floor, feeling out of place among the chattering parents and kids. Ethan was up front, proudly showing off a painting of a dragon soaring over a city that looked a lot like the one we'd left behind when Sarah and I split. Caleb was everywhere, directing kids, reassuring nervous parents, his energy a quiet force that held the room together. When he spotted me, his face lit up, and he made his way over, weaving through the crowd with a grace that made my chest tighten. "You came," he said, his voice warm with surprise. "Couldn't miss it," I replied, my throat dry. I gestured to Ethan's painting. "He's got talent." "He gets it from you," Caleb said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I saw the sketches in your truck when I walked you out last week. You're an artist too, aren't you?" I laughed, a rough sound. Doodling house plans doesn't make me an artist. But the way he looked at me, like he saw something I didn't, made me want to believe him. We walked through the showcase together, Caleb pointing out each kid's work with a story: how shy Mia found her voice through watercolors, how troubled Jake poured his anger into bold charcoal lines. His passion for these kids, for Ethan, was undeniable. It was more than a job to him. It was a calling. And it stirred something in me, a longing to be part of something bigger than my own small life. As the evening wound down, Ethan ran off with friends, leaving me and Caleb alone by a table of half-eaten cookies. "You're good with him," I said, meaning Ethan, but also something more. Caleb shrugged, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "I just try to see them for who they are. Like I see you." My breath caught. "And who do you think I am?" He hesitated, then met my gaze. "Someone who's been hurt but keeps showing up anyway. Someone who loves fiercely, even when it's hard." I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever described me like that. Not Sarah. Not anyone. I mumbled something about needing to get Ethan home, but Caleb stopped me with a hand on my arm. "David, if you ever want to talk, really talk, I am here." That night, I couldn't sleep. Caleb's words echoed in my head, mingling with memories of Sarah's cold departure, the way she'd looked at me like I was a stranger. I'd spent 2 years convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That love was a luxury I couldn't afford. But Caleb's touch, his voice, his belief in might was pulling me apart. The next week, I found excuses to see him. I volunteered to help with the art club, claiming it was for Ethan. But every time Caleb handed me a paintbrush or laughed at one of my terrible jokes, I felt like a teenager again, alive in a way I hadn't been in years. One afternoon, as we cleaned up after a session, Caleb told me about himself. He'd grown up in Chicago, the only out gay kid in a conservative neighborhood. "I learned early how to stand up for what I believe in," he said, wiping paint from his hands. "But it wasn't easy." I wanted to ask more, to understand the weight he carried. But Ethan burst in, demanding snacks. Caleb just laughed, ruffling my son's hair, and I felt a pang of something I couldn't name: gratitude. Maybe. Or something deeper. By the time I realized I was falling for him, it was too late to turn back. But Willow Creek wasn't Chicago. People here noticed things, whispered things. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face what loving Caleb might mean for me. For Ethan. For everything I thought I knew about myself. The air was crisp. The kind of October chill that made you want to burrow into a jacket. I was at the school again. This time helping Caleb build a backdrop for the fall play. Ethan was off rehearsing lines. His first time trying theater. Another thing Caleb had nudged him toward. Watching my son come alive under Caleb's guidance was a gift. But it was also a reminder of how much I was risking. Caleb and I worked side by side, sawing wood and painting flats, our shoulders brushing occasionally. Each touch sent a jolt through me, and I caught him glancing my way, his eyes searching. "You're good at this," he said, nodding at the backdrop. "You ever think about doing more with your art?" "Never had the time," I said, focusing on the brush in my hand. "Bills don't pay themselves." He nodded, but his expression was thoughtful. "Sometimes you gotta make time for what lights you up, David. Or you lose yourself." His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I'd spent so long surviving work. Ethan. The endless grind that I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for myself. And now, here was Caleb, making me want him. That evening, as we finished up, Caleb invited me to his place for a drink. "Just to unwind," he said, casual but with a spark in his eyes. I hesitated. Ethan was at a sleepover, and I had no excuse except my own fear. But I said yes, because saying no to Caleb was getting harder every day. His apartment was small, a cozy space filled with books and art supplies, a guitar leaning against the wall. He poured us whiskey, and we sat on his couch, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "Tell me something real," he said suddenly, his voice low. "Something you don't tell anyone." I took a sip, the burn grounding me. "I'm scared all the time," I admitted. "Scared I'm not enough for Ethan. Scared I'll never be enough for anyone." Caleb's hand found mine, his fingers warm and steady. "You're enough, David. More than enough." I don't know who moved first, but suddenly we were kissing, his lips soft and urgent against mine. It was like coming alive after years underwater, every nerve singing with need. But just as quickly, I pulled back, my heart pounding. "I can't," I said, my voice ragged. "I'm not. I don't know what this is." Caleb's face was open, vulnerable. "It's okay to not know," he said. "But don't run from it." I left his apartment in a daze, the taste of him still on my lips. Driving home, I gripped the steering wheel, my mind a storm of guilt and desire. I'd spent my life believing I was one kind of man, straight, steady, predictable. But Caleb was rewriting everything, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to face it. The next day, I avoided the school. I told myself it was for the best, that I needed to focus on Ethan, on work, on anything but the way Caleb made me feel. But when Ethan came home, he was quiet, his eyes red. "Mr. Winters asked about you," he said. He looked sad. Guilt twisted in my gut. I'd hurt Caleb, and worse, I was hurting myself. I wanted to go to him, to apologize, to try again. But Willow Creek was watching, and the weight of their judgment felt like a noose around my neck. I stayed away for a week, burying myself in work, avoiding Caleb's texts. But every night, I saw his face, heard his voice, felt the ghost of his kiss. Ethan noticed my distance, his questions sharp and unyielding. "Why don't you like Mr. Winters anymore?" he asked one night, his small voice cutting through me. "I like him," I said, too quickly. "I'm just busy." Ethan didn't buy it. But he let it go, his trust in me fraying. I hated myself for it, for letting my fear hurt the two people I cared about most. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the school after hours, knowing Caleb stayed late to grade papers. He was in his classroom, surrounded by stacks of assignments. His tie loosened, his face tired but still beautiful. "David," he said, startled, standing up. "I didn't think you'd come." "I'm sorry," I blurted. "For running. For everything." He crossed the room, stopping just short of touching me. "I get it," he said. "This is new for you. It's scary. But I'm not going anywhere." We talked for hours, sitting on the classroom floor, sharing stories we'd never told anyone. He told me about his first love, a boy who broke his heart in high school. I told him about Sarah, about the years of trying to be the man she wanted, only to lose myself in the process. When I finally left, the weight in my chest was lighter. I wasn't ready to name what I felt for Caleb, but I knew I couldn't keep running from it. The next day, I brought Ethan to the art club, and Caleb greeted us with a smile that made my heart ache. We fell into a rhythm working together, laughing, stealing glances when Ethan wasn't looking. It felt like a secret, fragile and precious. But secrets don't stay hidden in Willow Creek. At the next PTA meeting, I overheard Whisper's parents gossiping about Caleb, about how he was too friendly with me, about how it wasn't appropriate. My stomach churned. I wanted to defend him, to tell them they were wrong, but fear kept me silent. That night, I called Caleb, my voice shaking. "People are talking," I said. "About us." He was quiet for a long moment. "Let them talk," he finally said. "I'm not ashamed of who I am." "Are you?" His question hung in the air, a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. I wanted to be brave, to be the man Caleb saw in me. But the thought of losing Ethan, of losing everything, was a shadow I couldn't shake. The whispers grew louder, a hum that followed me through the grocery store, the hardware shop, the school pickup line. Willow Creek was small, and judgment was its currency. I tried to ignore it, to focus on Ethan and Caleb, but the pressure was suffocating. Caleb, though, was unshaken. He invited me to a community art fair he'd organized, a chance for the kids to show their work to the town. "It's for Ethan," he said, but his eyes told me it was for us too, a chance to be seen together, even if just as friends. The fair was vibrant, a kaleidoscope of color and noise. Ethan's booth was a hit, his dragon painting drawing gasps from passers-by. Caleb moved through the crowd, charming everyone, but I saw the strain in his smile when parents gave him cold looks. One mother, Karen Ellis, cornered me near the lemonade stand. "You know what they're saying about that teacher," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're a good father, David. Be careful who you let around your son." Anger flared in me, but fear kept my mouth shut. I mumbled something vague and walked away, hating myself for it. Caleb deserved better. Ethan deserved better. That night, I took Caleb to the diner again, needing to clear the air. I heard what Karen said. He told me, his voice steady but hurt. "I'm used to it, David. But it's harder when it's about you." "I'm sorry," I said, reaching for his hand under the table. "I should have said something." He squeezed my hand, his touch grounding me. "You don't have to fight every battle. Just don't let them win." We kissed in the parking lot, hidden by the shadows, and for a moment, the world felt right. But as I drove home, the weight of Karen's words settled back in. I wasn't just risking my reputation, I was risking Ethan's place in this town, his sense of safety. The next day, Ethan came home with a black eye. Some kids said stuff about Mr. Winters. He told me, his voice small. I told them to stop, and they hit me. Rage and guilt crashed over me. I wanted to protect my son, to protect Caleb, but I didn't know how. I called Caleb, and he came over, his face pale as he looked at Ethan's bruise. "This is my fault," he said, his voice breaking. "No," I said fiercely. "It's theirs. And I'm done letting them hurt the people I love." The words slipped out Lovey and Caleb's eyes widened. I hadn't meant to say it, but it was true. I loved him, and I was tired of hiding it. I spent the next day at the school, meeting with the principal about Ethan's fight. She was sympathetic but cautious, hinting that Caleb's influence might be stirring things up. I didn't back down this time. "Caleb's the best thing that's happened to this school," I said. "And to my son." Word of my defense spread, and the whispers grew sharper. Friends I'd known for years stopped calling. At the hardware store, the clerk barely looked at me. But Caleb was worth it. Ethan was worth it. We started spending more time together, the three of us. Caleb taught Ethan to play guitar, and I cooked dinners that filled my small house with warmth. It felt like a family, tentative and new, but real. One night, as Ethan slept, Caleb and I sat on my porch, the stars bright above us. "I'm falling for you," he said, his voice soft but sure. "But I need to know you're in this, David. All the way." I took his hand, my heart pounding. "I'm in," I said. "I'm scared, but I'm in." We made love that night, slow and careful, like we were learning each other's souls. It was different from anything I'd known, not just because he was a man, but because it was him, Caleb, with his courage and his heart. But the world wasn't done with us. The school board called a meeting, prompted by concerned parents. They didn't say it outright, but I knew it was about Caleb, about us. I went, my hands shaking, ready to fight. Caleb spoke first, his voice steady as he defended his teaching, his care for the kids. But Karen Ellis stood up, her words venomous. "This isn't about his teaching," she said. "It's about his lifestyle. We don't want that around our children." The room erupted, voices clashing, and I felt the walls closing in. I stood, my voice louder than I expected. "Caleb Winters is a better man than anyone in this room," I said. "He's made my son feel safe, made me feel alive. If you can't handle that, that's your problem, not ours." The silence that followed was deafening. Caleb's eyes met mine, shining with pride and something deeper. I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The school board didn't fire Caleb, but the tension lingered. Some parents pulled their kids from his class, and Ethan faced more taunts at school. I hated seeing my son hurt, but he was fierce, standing up for Caleb, for us. "Mr. Winters' family," he told me one night, and my heart swelled. Caleb and I grew closer, stealing moments when we could. We took Ethan to an art gallery in Columbus, the three of us laughing like we belonged together. But the town's judgment was a constant shadow. My business took a hit, clients canceled, citing personal reasons. One evening, Caleb came over, his face drawn. "I got an offer," he said. "A school in Chicago. They want me to start next semester." My stomach dropped. "Are you going to take it?" He looked at me, his eyes searching. "I don't want to leave you and Ethan. But I'm tired, David." tired of fighting just to exist. I pulled him close, my voice fierce. Then we'll fight together. You're not alone in this. We decided to stay, to face Willow Creek head-on. I started talking openly about us, not hiding anymore. Some people turned away, but others friends, neighbors, even a few parents stood by us. Ethan's art club grew, a safe haven for kids who felt like outsiders. One night, Caleb and I sat down with Ethan, explaining our relationship. So you love Mr. Winters? Ethan asked, his eyes wide but curious. Yeah, I said, my voice steady. I do. Ethan grinned. Cool. Can he move in? We laughed, the weight lifting for a moment. Caleb squeezed my hand, and I knew we'd made the right choice. Willow Creek might never fully accept us, but we were building something strong, a family, a home, a love that could withstand anything. Spring came, and with it, a sense of renewal. Caleb stayed, turning down the Chicago offer. We moved in together, converting my spare room into an art studio for him and Ethan. The house felt alive again, filled with laughter and paint-splattered clothes. The town was still divided, but we found our people, parents who valued Caleb's teaching, kids who adored him, friends who saw our love for what it was. My business stabilized, thanks to new clients from outside Willow Creek who didn't care about the gossip. Ethan's 11th birthday was a milestone. We threw a party in the backyard, Caleb grilling burgers while Ethan and his friends ran wild. Watching them, I realized how far we'd come. I'd been a man afraid of his own heart, but Caleb had shown me how to be brave, how to love without shame. That night, after Ethan went to bed, Caleb and I sat on the porch, a blanket draped over us. You changed my life, I told him, my voice thick with emotion. I didn't know I could feel like this. He smiled, his eyes soft. You changed mine too. You and Ethan my home. We didn't have all the answers. There would be more fights, more whispers, more moments of doubt. But we had each other, and that was enough. As I looked at Caleb, his face lit by the moonlight, I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, lost, lonely, afraid. Caleb hadn't just been Ethan's teacher. He'd been my teacher too, showing me that love was worth the risk, that a heart could heal and grow stronger than before. And as we sat there, hand in hand, I knew I'd never let him go. Not for Willow Creek, not for the world. Because this our messy, beautiful, hard-won love was the truest thing I'd ever known.